Scars of Nature. Chapter 1: The Necromancer's Hut. The wind tore across the barren heath, shrieking like a banshee as Jezebel, Jez to anyone bold enough to use her name, stood before a shimmering blue portal. Its edges crackled with a low, electric hum that vibrated in her chest. Her leather armor, weathered and patched from years of ranging, creaked as she shifted her weight, the ashwood bow in her hands a familiar anchor. Beside her stood Archaeus, a mage cloaked in midnight blue robes that rippled faintly in the gale. His staff, etched with runes that pulsed like distant stars, rested lightly in his grip. They'd met mere days ago, when Jez fled her village after a necromantic raid left her father Runver, bleeding and broken, entrusted to the healer Ali. Now, bound by a fragile alliance, they faced a festering evil Jez had glimpsed in her escape. A necromancer's hut, its dark silhouette a blight. "On the wilds," she called home. "Ready?" Archaeus's voice cut through the wind, steady but laced with a tension that mirrored her own. His dark eyes flickered. Caution, perhaps, or something deeper. Jez nodded, her throat tight. She'd hunted wolves and bandits, but this was different. This was personal. Taking a steadying breath, she stepped through the portal, the icy surge of magic prickling her skin like 1,000 needles. She emerged inside the hut, the air slamming into her with a miasma of decay. Rotting meat, damp, earth, and a sharp metallic tang that stung her nostrils. The walls, rough-hewn logs blackened with soot and streaked with what might have been blood, loomed close. Green flames danced in iron sconces, casting jagged shadows that writhed like living things. Archaeus wasted no time. His hands traced swift. Glowing sigils and bolts of radiant energy erupted from his staff, streaking toward 3 robed figures hunched over a bubbling cauldron. Their hoods obscured their faces, but their shrieks, high and hollow, like wind through a skull, sent a shiver down Jez's spine. The floorboards shuddered, splitting as skeletal hands clawed upward, bones gleaming with an unnatural sheen. Jez's pulse hammered as she knocked an arrow, her calloused fingers finding the familiar groove. Focus. Aim. Release. The bowstring twanged, and her arrow buried itself in a necromancer's chest with a wet thud, toppling him into the cauldron. A second arrow found another's skull, silencing his incantation mid-word. The room dissolved into chaos. Archaeus's spells flared against dark tendrils of necromantic power, and the skeletons lurched forward, their hollow sockets aglow with emerald fire. Then from the shadows lumbered a giant skeleton, its bones yellowed and pitted, its ribcage vast enough to cage a man. It clutched a club, splintered and dark with old gore, and swung with a force that splintered a support beam overhead. Dust and wood shards rained down, stinging Jez's eyes as she rolled behind an overturned table. "Stay back!" Archaeus shouted, his staff blazing as he unleashed a barrage of arcane missiles. The projectiles peppered the giant's frame, but it pressed on, its eyeless gaze locked on Jez. Her breath came in sharp gasps, sweat slicking her palms. She darted left, her boots skidding on the slick floor, searching for a chink in its armor. The green glow in its skull pulsed rhythmically. There. She drew, her arms trembling with fatigue, and loosed. The arrow struck true, shattering the skull into a spray of bone fragments. The giant wavered, then crashed to the floor, its remains scattering like spilled coins. Silence fell, heavy and oppressive. Jez's chest heaved, her bow still clenched tight. Archaeus wiped soot from his face, flashing a crooked grin. "Steady hand, Jez. Not many could fell that beast." She forced a smile, her legs unsteady beneath her. The victory tasted bitter amidst the carnage, but there was no respite. As they combed the wreckage, Jez's sharp eyes snagged on a tattered rug in the corner, its edges curled unnaturally. She crouched, her fingers brushing the coarse weave, and tugged it aside to reveal a trapdoor, its wood swollen with damp and etched with faint, ominous runes. "Curious?" Archaeus murmured, his brow creasing. They pried it open, the hinges groaning in protest, and descended a spiraling staircase into a tunnel that reeked of mildew and secrets. The air grew frigid, the walls slick with condensation that dripped onto Jez's shoulders. Their torchlight flickered, revealing a cavernous hall at the tunnel's end. its ceiling swallowed by darkness. Runes pulsed along the stone, casting a faint blue glow over piles of gold, enchanted weapons and scrolls yellowed with age. But the treasure came with guardians. Skeletons rose from the floor, their bones snapping into formation, swords glinting in their grasp. The fight was a blur of motion. Jez's arrows thinned their ranks, while Arceus's spells shattered those that closed in. When the last fell, she knelt among the scrolls, her fingers tracing cryptic warnings. One name emerged again and again: the Witch, a shadowy puppeteer behind the Necromancer's schemes. As they stepped through Arceus's portal back to the Druid village, Jez clutched the scrolls, a cold dread coiling in her gut. This was no isolated threat. It was the opening gambit in something far larger.